Good morning and welcome to Balance of Power. I'm Brandon Rittiman. Last time I talked to this morning's guest, he told me he wasn't a Republican anymore. Last time he ran for governor, though, he was. And he told the Denver Post recently he's thinking about it again. Certainly got the attention of the growing field of Republican candidates for governor in 2018. Former Congressman Tom Tancredo is here with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Sir, it's a pleasure, man.
All right, so what do you put the odds of you actually jumping into this thing?
50-50.
50-50 right now.
You want to lay any money on it?
That's probably not doing anything about the unease out there. Let me ask you this: if you do it, would you run as a Republican?
Oh yeah. I actually have changed back. I bounced back right to Republican here.
You're a Republican in the flesh.
Yep.
Okay. Why'd that happen?
Well, because frankly, if you're going to run a sort of beau geste race, you know, I'm going to do this just for the heck of it to make somebody mad or to make a point, then you can run as an independent, because that's in fact what you can do and would do. But if you really want to actually win something, you have to run as part of the party, and so I'm back as a Republican. Right. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I have any more Republican friends than I had before, and probably fewer.
It is. You can just go to the Secretary of State's office and switch without anybody saying
or seeing you.
Yeah,
you can do
no
it. You can do it online. That's right.
Aren't you just pulling a Bernie Sanders here, though? I mean, he's an independent, runs as a Democrat. I mean, opposite end of the spectrum.
What a thing to say.
No, but the tactic, isn't it the same thing?
Well,
that he gets criticized for.
No. First of all, I do not think I am as far to the right as he is far to the left. Now, you may disagree. I understand that, but I don't think it's as wacky an idea for me to do this as it was for him. But the reality is, I'm sure we both have, parts of the party that support our effort, parts that don't. And so to that extent, yeah, it's a similar endeavor. And you have to say to yourself, is this state, are we as blue as has been depicted by a lot of the media and even by some races? Or you may recall that 4 years ago, well, let me say 2014, in the governor's race, I actually was ahead of, I ran in the primary, ran as a Republican. I was ahead of everybody in the Republican Party till the last 10 days, when the Republican Party actually put in almost $250,000 against me. And they actually did it as a result of laundering about $250,000 through the Republican Attorneys General Association. It was weird, but that's what happened.
You also had Democrats trying to help you in the primary, though.
Well,
did you ever wrap your mind around that?
Well, then they better be here now, because now they can vote in the Republican primary, right? Anybody can.
Unaffiliateds can.
Yeah. But anyway, I was ahead. My point is, I was ahead, and even with all of the things everybody knows about Tom Tancredo, I was ahead. Not only was I ahead, but in 2 polls, I was ahead of Hickenlooper. That's because I had a very strong unaffiliated support base. Well, so does that mean they're not there anymore? Does it mean it's impossible? Now that we know what the Republican Party can do, and I can perhaps work to avoid that occurring, hey, who knows?
So that Denver Post piece on you thinking about a run that I read made it kind of seem like you were doing it out of angst with the Republican field we've got so far. What's your problem with the candidates that are already in on the Republican side?
Well, I'd like them to be a little more visible, actually. I'd also like them to be a little louder in their positions, especially on issues like sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, what the city of Denver has done, in terms of, hey, passing a law in Denver to say, essentially we're not going to help anybody who's working to enforce the law with regard to sanctuary cities. So, yeah, there are plenty of things I wish they were more out front about. And, a lot of them want to run as sort of Republican light, Well, who needs that, frankly? If that's the case, you really don't have to have 2 parties. And in this case, I think I can actually articulate a different kind of agenda.
As part of that Denver Post article, you came out pretty hard against Republicans for not defending VDARE, which is an online platform for white supremacists. Why defend white supremacists while talking about a run for governor?
Well, it is, first of all, it's not It's not.
It's not?
You say that as if, oh, well, certainly VDARE is an online.
Can I read you some of their headlines?
Oh,
can I? Baylor football's black rape culture pushed by white coaches, protected by white administrators.
The fact is that it is a forum, and people can and do post, but the essence of VDARE is not white supremacist, and the fact that people like and organizations like the Southern Poverty Law Center call it such does not make it such.
I don't need to go to them. I mean, do we need more Hispanics is an article headline that argues no, of course. It says Hispanics who manage to stay in school do as poorly as blacks as part of its reasoning.
Well, okay, you can say things like that. Does it necessarily make you a white supremacist? And maybe in your mind it does. It doesn't in mine. I would read it. I would read it skeptically.
I got 2 pages of this stuff just searching for the words whites and blacks and things like that on their website. It's what they do. It's how they attract an audience.
No, to talk about race in America is not a sin. And even if you talk about it in terms that might upset you, does not mean that it is something that is as malicious as you want to make it out to be. I don't perceive it to be that way.
Saboteurs, even in the Border Patrol, are they Hispanic? Open speculation.
So?
There's a small cadre of America-hating agents, mostly a segment of the Hispanic presence in the Border Patrol. Not to denigrate Hispanic agents, but generally those who oppose the mission are Hispanic, women, blacks, or homosexuals, and are also more likely to be corrupt. Why are you defending people who want to put this stuff out there?
I'm not defending that person, but I'll tell you that there is a case to be made for when you look at the corruption in the Border Patrol. If it turns out to be, and I do not know this to be the case. I'm just saying that if it turns out to be that all of the people who have been identified as corrupt in the Border Patrol, who have violated the law in some way, what if they turn out to be mostly Hispanic? If you write that, does that make you a racist?
It's open speculation. They don't have any hard data behind this.
No, that's not true. That's not. Well, I don't know about that because I never read that, but I will tell you that if you write something like that, you better have something to back it up, and I'm not going to defend it if you don't, but all I'm saying to you is let's assume for a moment that that was the case, that there was empirical evidence, okay, that was true. And if you wrote it, would that make you racist or a white supremacist?
But there isn't, though.
How do you know that?
Because they don't have any in the article.
How do you know that?
I read it.
No. How do you know that there isn't that information?
So we're just going to engage in open speculation that some races may be more corrupt than others as federal agents?
If you want to make that kind of, if it makes that kind of speculation, it's full of crap.
Okay.
Okay. It is.
All right. So what is your problem with people not defending this group, though? That's the part I can't wrap my head around.
The problem with people not defending the group?
Yeah, you were upset in the Denver Post article about people not coming to this group's aid for having their thing canceled.
Look, here, if you think about and really read what I was saying, or at least trying to say to the Denver Post, not necessarily what they said, that I said, but what I was trying to say was, look, all you Republicans out there, you don't have to defend me or VDARE. All you have to do, all I'm asking you to do is defend the First Amendment. Because you see, even if VDARE was all the things you said and you think it to be, even if it were, and it isn't, but even if it were, would they not have a right to say what they say?
Who's saying they can't say what they say?
The mayor of the city of Colorado Springs,
he doesn't have a First Amendment right to say, I don't want these people in my town
you
saying
better
their
not
stuff?
say. You better not tell the center that's going to have the event that you're not going to provide any services to this thing. This is for a conference, mind you, a conference that was going to be held in April of next year.
Yeah.
It was not
Which was canceled by a private business, not the government.
Oh yeah, but why? Because the government came down and said, I won't give you any services. I won't give you police protection. Well, what would you do if you were that organization that was holding the event? If you find out, first of all, it wasn't even controversial until they made it that way, until the mayor spoke out and Media Matters. It was a conference, not nobody was asking for a permit to march or any. It was a conference, okay, to be held in a conference center. Maybe 100 people at max would have shown up. They would have had their little talk and gone home. Nobody would have had a thing to say about it except the mayor made his business to pander, which of course is typical, and And as a result, all hell breaks loose. And yeah, they cancel the conference. That is absolutely, I'll tell you, unacceptable from the standpoint of anybody who believes in the First Amendment.
So if the conference center up and canceled this on its own without pressure that you're citing from local government down there, that's a different thing.
Sure, absolutely. And it happened, by the way, in the past.
Yeah. Okay. What do you make of this development right now between President Trump and the Democrats dealing on DACA?
Yeah,
I mean,
weird. I don't know.
It is weird. What do you make of it?
Well, I don't know exactly what to make of it because as we speak here, this time on this day,
yes,
I haven't really had the slightest idea what the deal was.
I mean, in principle, both sides are saying they're talking about extending the provisions of DACA to some extent. I mean, do you take issue with President Trump putting his signature on something that does that?
Oh, yeah. If it just does that. Absolutely.
If it does that and comes with enhanced border security and yada yada.
And yada yada. And believe me, it better be a lot of good yada yada.
Not the wall, they say.
Yeah, well, to tell you the truth, and I wrote a column for, actually the Denver Post printed this one. I was surprised myself, but I wrote a column a while back about this issue, and I said, you know, the wall is not the fix. I'm all for it. It's fine. But it's not the fix. If you really want to do something about immigration control, getting a handle on this issue, you have to do what's called E-Verify. You have to mandate E-Verify for every employer, and then you have to enforce it. There has to be a penalty attached to it if you violate it. And if you do that, I will absolutely take an extension of DACA. No problem. Because that really is...
To you, it's mostly about jobs, then?
It's you see, jobs are the magnet. That's what draws people, of course, right? Most of the people coming across looking for jobs. If that magnet is broken, if the thing that you want is not available, or when you're here, if it is no longer attainable, then you either don't come or you go home.
So you think the wall is kind of maybe splashy and overplayed by the Trump camp?
Oh, yeah, I do. And I think, you know, I'm a little disappointed because I'm afraid that a lot of people would go, a lot of people on my side or in the Trump campaign would say, oh, good, that's all we need. You know, if he gets that, that's fine. But
check that box and we're done.
Then but it's not fine. It's not. And there's a lot more that needs to be done. A lot better things could be done. And, you know, to extend DACA, remember what DACA was, or I guess we can say almost was, or, you know, it's still out there for a while, right? But it was an unconstitutional act by the previous president, who had a penchant for that, by the way.
Wasn't struck down by a court. Your opinion
didn't get it there.
Well,
yeah, but the previous one, of course, which is exactly the same thing, only for adults, was struck down by the. Well, it was struck down by a lower court, and then a 4-4 decision by the Supreme Court allowed that to stand. So it essentially was, and it was essentially the same thing.
For a different group of people.
And it was heading in the same direction. It was unconstitutional. There's no way that a president of the United States can unilaterally, even if you want to call it I think he called it a presidential action rather than a presidential executive order. No matter what you want to call it, it is unconstitutional for anybody to say, here's a class of people I'm going to change the law for, unilaterally. So I'm glad that it was at least brought to an end, or it is heading toward the end of DACA. I think it was unconstitutional. Now, remember what it said. Remember what it said. He said in the Rose Garden, when he did this, when Obama did this, he said, this is not a permanent fix. This is temporary. It is not a pathway to citizenship. He went on through, it is not amnesty. This is just a temporary fix. Now, if you want to go back to that, if that's what they're arguing, if that's what they're trying to, you know, come up with a deal on, you say, okay, we'll go back to the DACA arrangement. As long as we get, as I say, something significant out of it in terms of real, honest-to-God immigration reform, I'm okay with it.
All right. Last thing I got for you goes back to kind of where we started, which is there is a segment of, I guess you could call them more mainstream Republicans that might argue you're a spoiler. Some of them are harboring resentment to you for John Hickenlooper being in the governor's office right now, still to this day. Yeah. What do you say to Republican primary voters about that argument that's
well,
out there?
I'd say look at what happened the last time around, Republicans. The Republican Party, as I said, the Republican Governors Association, a guy by the name of Chris Christie, laundered, and I mean laundered, I'm not sure. It was close to $250,000. The actual amount and the way it was done was found out by the Denver Post, not by me. It was found out by a reporter who called us and said, "You know where all this money is coming from?" And we said, "No, we're wondering the same thing." And she told us. Anyway, they laundered the money in to attack me in 2 counties especially, El Paso and up in Grand Junction. And so it worked, and I went from first to second place. And the first place guy was Bob Beaupre. Now, Republicans, remember that, because Bob Beaupre, the only loss
I was kind of
we
referring back to the first election for Hickenlooper. But I hear what you're saying.
But exactly. I mean, but that was the weirdest thing you ever saw in your life, that whole election, because you had this goofball. And I mean, they would say, there was 2 of them. Tancredo is too. You know,
I was just going to go there, so thanks for doing that. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. No, right. My point is, the Republicans, last time in this very blue state of Colorado, lost 1 statewide election. Just 1. And that was governor. So remember.
So the answer is a redder candidate?
Well, I was doing better than he was.
In the general?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Well, why not? I mean, he didn't make it, did he? Could you be more milquetoast, more squishy than Bob Beaupre? Can you actually find somebody out there who's going to out Beaupre and win? I don't know. It'd be hard to imagine.
All right. Tom Tancredo, if he enters the governor's race with the Republicans, it won't necessarily be the calmest entrance. We appreciate it.
No.
Thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
All right. Nice to talk to you. This has been Balance of Power. I'm Brandon Rittiman. We'll see you here on Sundays.